Welcome to Hear Me Overanalyze, where I deep dive things I'm currently obsessed with. Today, I'm going to be overanalyzing the Yellowjackets season 2 finale named Storytelling. Disclaimer: I realize this is coming out a bit late. It's been almost a week since this episode came out. I'm sorry, it's not my fault. I had to get chemo literally on the day the finale came out. So today is the quickest that I could turn this around after recovering a little bit from that. That being said, I have gone out of my way to avoid all Yellowjackets related content online so as not to copy anyone else's thoughts. It's been really hard for me to stay away because I'm obsessed with Yellowjackets right now. So here we go. We start out in 1996 with everyone returning from the hunt. To kick us off, we see Natalie walking back to the cabin after the hunt, and she looks utterly horrified, traumatized, all of it. Travis is waiting outside because he was so worried about her, and he is so happy to see her, which is absolutely devastating, knowing what he's about to see. When the other girls catch up, Van's eyes are wicked. Everyone else, for the most part, looks like they've kind of de-escalated from this intense kind of wolf pack hunt. Not Van. She stands out for sure. Everyone else looks tired, sad, exhausted. When Travis sees the girls returning and notices Javi being carried on essentially like a pole, Natalie says, "Travis, it happened so fast. The wilderness chose." Now, guys, that's important because this is the very first time that we see teen Natalie believing in some sort of power or being that's contributing to their experience in the wilderness. I think this shows that this is really fresh trauma, and her brain is trying to make sense of this horrible near-death experience. I mean, what else is she supposed to think in that moment? I don't think that she's saying it just to try to make Travis like not angry with her. She really seems to believe it in this moment that there was something else that contributed to this horrific experience. When Travis runs over crying, Thaisa is the one to lead the other girls inside without comforting Travis at all. I found that to be really interesting because we're kind of seeing them lose more and more of their humanity here. Especially Thaisa. She's more of one to comfort people. We saw her comfort Shauna through all of her very traumatic experiences. So this is a shift for sure. We jump to 2021. And it's a close-up shot of the glasses that Lottie wants everyone to drink from. And we know that one of them is poisoned. Lottie says, "We don't get to decide. It chooses. It won't stop until it gets what it wants." And then Lottie tries to drink one of the cups. This is interesting because last week it was pointed to, one of the other women said out loud that Lottie is the only one who knows which one is poisoned. By her trying to drink one, it seems like she chose the poisoned one and was willing to be the sacrifice for the group, which is a little odd considering Lottie is about to go hard on the fact that it's not really up to them who dies. It's up to the wilderness. So maybe this is just to reiterate the mental health crisis that Lottie is currently experiencing, but it is my opinion that the glass she tries to drink from is the poisoned glass. That is what I believe. Shauna leads the way in stopping her from drinking it. Shauna proposes the idea that we do have to do it the way that we used to, and everyone is horrified except Lottie, who hugs Shauna for that validation. And behind Lottie's back in the hug, Shauna's motioning to the rest of the group like, no, I'm not serious about this. I haven't completely lost it. Lottie is very adamant that they go through the ritual that night, which tells us that the women have about 12 hours from beginning to end of this episode, because it is still dark outside when they're like hugging and all of that. So we're led to assume that it's very early morning, so at least 12 hours. It is queued up very early that Lottie is supposed to make sure that the rest of the compound stays out of the woods, stays in their cabins, and is not involved in this at all. It's pointed to multiple times throughout the episode. After Lottie leaves, Natalie says, "Why are you humoring her? She's homicidal." Despite the audience knowing that this ritual ends in death, like that is very obvious, despite that, having Natalie say the word homicidal really pulls the idea that someone is going to be murdered to the forefront of our brains. So that is supposed to be at the front, even though we kind of already know. Shauna explains that she is just trying to buy time. She is not trying to have a hunt in the woods, old-timey style. Misty proposes the idea of having like a crisis team come out to recommit Lottie or to hospitalize Lottie for her own good in some way, shape, or form. Thaisa verbally agrees, but if you watch Van's face in that scene, she's opposed to the idea right away. Natalie thinks hospitalizing Lottie isn't going to be enough, which is interesting. So it's kind of like her and Van are on opposite ends of the spectrum in this. But then Van says this isn't just about her mental illness. This is also her trauma, which for some reason Van doesn't think that mental health intervention would assist with trauma-related crisis. There's a chance we're supposed to gather that Van is mistrusting of medical professionals in this episode. We know that Van has cancer. We know that she told Thaisa that she only has months to live. But we haven't seen any evidence that Van attempted to treat her cancer at all. I know that's a choice that some people make, especially if they're told that their cancer is terminal, but I'm just proposing the idea that there might be something to Van mistrusting medical professionals. So she's not interested in seeking treatment for herself, Lottie, Thaisa, anybody. We jump back to 1996 with Lottie lying awake in the attic. In my opinion, she already looks visibly healed compared to last episode, episode 8. Misty goes up to the attic where Lottie is, and Lottie asks why Travis was screaming. Misty explains that they're going to eat Javi. After episode 8, there was definitely speculation I saw online around how much Lottie knew and if she was... After episode 8, there was definitely speculation online around how much Lottie knew and if she was having like play-by-play visions of what the group was doing while she was sick in the attic. Lottie doesn't seem to know any details about the hunt, so I'm going to assume, at least at this point, that she did not have play-by-play visions. Misty explains the hunt, the cards, the queen, all of it to Lottie, and Lottie is horrified. This is in direct contrast with 2021 adult Lottie, who is excited about the idea of a hunt, who is saying that they must do the hunt. These scenes are back to back intentionally to show us like how much adult Lottie is experiencing trauma or whatever it is that she's experiencing. Lottie says, "How could you let them?" And Misty says, "How could I?" Lottie, you started this. It's done and it's going to save all of our lives. So you better not start making people feel bad about it in there. Misty then comes down from the attic and lies to the entire group when she says, "Lottie's pleased with the wilderness's decision." This is huge, guys, okay? I think this is immensely important. Last episode, I talked about how we're really seeing the teenagers' interpretation of the mysticism and the idea of the personified wilderness without Lottie. And now, even though Lottie is technically back saying this is wrong, we are seeing Misty, it's gotten out of Lottie's control now. It is bigger than her. So in this lie, Misty is assuaging everyone's guilt. We're just continuing to see that Misty really is a natural caregiver. Bear with me here. Some people might be freaking out and going, Misty is not a caregiver. I hear you. Bear with me. Her biggest problem then and now is that she operates based off of her own moral compass and her own moral code that is very strict. And it's also pretty deranged. So that's the biggest problem, is that Misty really is ride or die, to like literally ride or die. She will do anything to protect people that she loves within the confines of her own moral code. Apparently, Shauna is still the only person there who can use a knife. So they prompt her to go start butchering Javi. I'm going to use butcher as a verb coming up a couple of times. I just want you to know I feel very uncomfortable with that, talking about it in the context of a human being. I don't know what other word to use. I just don't. If there is a better word to use, I am totally open to that. Educate me on that word. I would prefer to use a different word. That is just the word that I currently have. Travis is still outside hugging poor Javi's body and mourning. Unlike Jackie, they do remove all of Javi's belongings, his clothes, his shoes, to reuse them. This, again, is signifying how the group is changing, becoming less sentimental, all of that. No one even says any words. Up until now, anyone who has passed, there's been like a little, like kind of moment of silence and someone says something nice. None of that happens. They're past that at this point. Shauna, however, can't look while she's doing this next part, which I do believe wholeheartedly is her humanity shining through. I talk about Shauna in a little bit. Shauna, she broke my heart this episode. She puts her hat over her face so that she doesn't have to see what she's about to do. Van finally looks sad, but she does move Javi's body in a way that would help Shauna's task, especially because Shauna's not looking. Cut to 2021. Misty is sneaking into Lottie's cabin. She is looking for Lottie's medication that would have her doctor's information on the label. She also breaks into the infamous wardrobe that Natalie has already broken into once. This wardrobe is not very secure, but Misty does break into it so that she can get her phone along with some other personal items, as we see later. In the wardrobe, though, we also see Natalie's rifle. And at this point, it is just straight up Chekhov's gun on the mantle, right? Like this, they could not point more to it. So we see it. Misty doesn't take it. It gets taken later by someone else. Walter, who is decked out in his heliotrope, has apparently arrived at the compound completely unnoticed and walks in on Misty. At this point, I 100% believe that Walter is a current or former member of this compound. He not only had the purple ready to go, he knew where Lottie's cabin was and the layout of the rest of the compound in general, as we see later, even though it's still daylight. So the innocent members, like just, I don't know what else to call them except Lottie's cult followers, are still allowed to be up and about. They are not confined to their bedrooms yet. Nobody notices Walter. Yes, I know Walter is a hacker, so I suppose he could have memorized the layout from like Google Earth or something, but he arrived a little too seamlessly for me to believe he has no connection to this place. I just don't buy it, guys. I don't. Walter is not just a Misty fangirl. I just don't believe. I don't buy it. We jump sideways over to Van and Ty, who are making the masks for the hunt. Ty says that Lottie is sick, and Van says that she's not, or if she is, then so are you. Okay, so we're learning Van believes that there is some sort of personified wilderness, even as an adult, which explains other Ty and Lottie's mysticism. She doesn't see it as a coincidence or a reaction to trauma. And she uses Ty's vulnerability right here in this moment around Ty's embarrassment around like other Ty, the sleepwalking, to make excuses for Lottie. So she kind of says like, well, if Lottie needs to be hospitalized, then so do you, which obviously Ty wouldn't want. It's manipulation. Van says, Ty, we have all felt it in our own way. She doesn't think that a psych ward would help Lottie or Ty. And I just want to pause right there because arguably it did help Lottie for a long time. Just because she is experiencing a psychiatric crisis right now does not mean that she has been experiencing a psychiatric crisis for 25 years. So it did work for a long time. And we have no idea if it would help Thaisa because there has been absolutely no mention of Ty ever receiving any sort of mental health services. So we don't know. Van then says, we handle this ourselves, protect each other. Didn't we all swear we would? So a couple things here. Getting Lottie mental health services is protecting her. She just tried to drink poison. And she's talking about recreating ceremonies where at least one person will die. To protect Lottie and others, you have to protect her from herself right now. Secondly, what exactly is Van's plan instead? If we're not doing psychiatric intervention, what's the other option, Van? How is going along with this protecting anybody? Later on, she doesn't seem like she's trying to protect anyone. Natalie is with Shauna in the kitchen area, and Natalie is burning the other queens and a deck of cards so that there's only the Queen of Hearts left. And Shauna is dulling all of the knives without Lottie's knowledge in hopes that they can't be used as weapons. I actually thought that was really smart of them to try to eliminate any weapons that Lottie might access. The only problem is I wish Natalie had thought about the fact that Lottie had Natalie's rifle. Obviously, Lottie doesn't utilize the rifle, but if we're trying to eliminate weapons from the premises, I wish that Natalie had thought of that. We jump sideways. We are still in 2021. We spend a lot of time in 2021 in this particular episode. We are with Jeff and Callie. They are driving to the compound and apparently talking about the feasibility of disappearing themselves. Jeff is very honest and says he doesn't know what to do. But he also gives Callie a whole bunch of information that she didn't necessarily need. Last episode, we saw Callie experiencing a lot of trauma, a lot of stress surrounding finding out who her mom really is and worrying that some of the brutality that her mother exhibits could be genetic. Jeff doesn't seem to pick up on the fact that he should be protecting his daughter a little bit from that. So in a convoluted way, he tells her about the carjacking and about how Shauna got the gun from the carjacker. And then he accidentally implies that the gun is in the glove box, literally inches from Callie's hands. This is the second gun of the episode that is very clearly pointed to, and don't worry, they're not red herrings from the writers, as we see both later in the episode. Hooray! They pull up to the compound, and curious purple people are walking toward them, which totally freaks them out, and they drive around to try and find another way in that is devoid of purple people. Of course, as they back up, they almost hit the car behind them that contains Kevin Tan and Creepy Cop. Last episode recap, I said I was going to learn Creepy Cop's name. Well, I changed my mind. Why would I learn it? He's so creepy and everyone knows who I'm talking about. So when I say creepy cop, you know who I mean. Mustache, creepy, get teenagers drunk cop that I do not like. You guys know. We jump sideways again. We are still in 2021 and we see Natalie finding and talking to Lisa. Lisa is dyeing clothes heliotrope, which honestly doesn't seem important, but I thought it was hilarious how many socks she was dyeing purple and hanging from the ceiling. Like, this, even socks, guys. There were so many socks. It was pretty funny. It was a nice little detail. Natalie says to her, I need you to leave while you still can. I'm assuming Natalie doesn't think it's safe for Lisa to stay anywhere near them or the compound while they're recreating this hunt, because she's seen the wilderness take innocent or random bystanders before. So she does not trust that Lottie's warning about how the compound member should stay away will be enough. She knows. Natalie knows how this works. Natalie says, please just go. Get yourself some regular clothes. Go have a life. You don't have to be one of these people. Just go, okay? In my opinion, this is really interesting because it's a warning for more than just that night, okay? Natalie wants Lottie out of Lisa's life completely. Natalie follows it up with, I appreciate you trying to teach me forgiveness. It's a nice idea. Natalie explaining that she doesn't understand the concept of forgiveness broke my heart. Natalie breaks my heart so many times this episode. She can't forgive herself. She can't forgive the other women. She can't forgive her mom. She can't forgive her dad. It's all too much. She feels incapable. And to be fair, Natalie's the only one of the women that we know of, other than Lottie, who's done a ton of work on her mental health. Yes, that was through drug rehab programs, but she still did it many times. So she has worked on herself and still struggles with that concept. We jump back to 1996, and freaking Coach Ben comes back. I was very clear in my episode 8 recap that I hate Coach Ben. And then I got online and I saw a lot of people giving Coach Ben love, and I was so freaking confused, guys. All I have to say is I told y'all. He is an immature, selfish little, not a fan. 0 out of 10. Anyway, he comes back from his little adventure. He sees Shauna butchering and looks excited, relieved, because he obviously thinks that they got like a wild animal. He takes a closer look and he sees, in my opinion, again, I don't know anything about this, but based off of the camera angles and shots, he sees way too much blood. And then he sees Javi's shoes, puts the pieces together, and he looks horrified because he's really judgmental and he doesn't even know what happened yet. And yes, he should be horrified because it was horrific, but Coach Ben, get out of my life. Natalie comes up behind him and asks where he's been. Coach asks, what happened? And Natalie looks so traumatized, and he just shakes his head like he's casting it off, like he doesn't even care. And then he just starts talking about what he wants to talk about. I cannot stand this man. I literally can't. Then, as if he didn't just see Shauna cutting up a body, he says, I figured out where Javi was hiding. I think that you and I together could probably survive the winter. You don't have to stay here. You're not like the rest of these girls. Excuse me? Coach Ben, do not get me wrong. I am upset with what happened to Javi as well, but I know, because it's my opinion, that you were going to come back and say those words to Natalie anyway, even if they had not just had to make a horrific decision to ensure their survival. I know that you were going to come back and say that stupid stuff anyway. So excuse me, she's not like the rest of the girls that have been keeping you alive. And what about Travis? And what about Javi? I'm not even convinced that you are certain that Javi's passed yet. What about them? No, just the girls. Just the girl. Okay. I'm done. I'm done with him. I just can't. Natalie explains that she thinks she's worse than the rest of the girls because she let Javi die in her place. This is so clearly trauma talking, and Coach Ben has the audacity to look at Natalie like she's a horrible monster. I'm going to repeat that line. Then Coach Ben gives her a look like she's a horrible monster, and one single solitary tear drops down his face. I'm so over him. Natalie calls him a good person, which I'm just going to attribute to her recent trauma because, in my opinion, he is not. And she doesn't mean that, in my opinion. We cut sideways to Travis talking to Van. And he says, you should be ashamed. And I'm going to cut snippets out of what Van said, but the important to what I'm going to discuss response from Van is, well, I'm not. I'm glad I'm alive, just like you are. Let your brother save you, Travis. I think it's a really weird choice to have Van talking to Travis about this instead of Taissa. Taissa was my gut initial chosen character of who would have been the best fit to talk to Travis, because so far she's usually the one to have difficult conversations with people. But I guess what makes Van the natural choice right here is that she doesn't feel bad. And I imagine that Ty does feel bad. I think there's also a possibility that Ty doesn't remember the actual hunt the same way that Ty doesn't remember eating Jackie. So she wouldn't have been incredibly useful in this conversation. So I guess Van is the natural next choice, but it did strike me as a little bit odd in the moment. Cut to 2021, and Walter is in the compound's industrial kitchen. He's making hot chocolate and singing "Send in the Clowns" from the musical A Little Night Music. The song is about two people being right for each other. This does seem to point to Misty more than the song from Sweeney Todd in the previous episode, though it could be a misdirection. If you've listened or watched my previous videos, you'll know that I personally don't think that song that he was listening to last episode was about Misty, but this one might be, or just misdirection. Who knows? Kevin Tan comes in and Walter acts terrified. And I do say act because I very much believe it is an act. Do you buy that Walter's sort of manic comparison of citizen detectives to police officers is real? Because I don't. I think Walter is acting in a way to completely disarm Kevin Tan. At the very least, it distracts Kevin. It does that for sure. Walter gives Kevin a mug of hot cocoa, but Walter does get important information from Kevin before Kevin drinks from the hot cocoa. I just want to point out, this is the second time we've seen hot cocoa in this series, and both times someone dies. We can't trust hot cocoa, y'all. Hot cocoa is canceled. Pour it down the drain. All right, from what we've seen, Walter has only suspected Misty of killing Adam. Misty never at any time brings up her friends surrounding Adam's death and disappearance, including when she calls and leaves that kind of ridiculous voicemail on Walter's phone. Kevin saying that they were there in regards to Shauna is the first time that Walter is pointed in that direction that we know of. Walter very hilariously brings up improv techniques in a minute in his conversation with Jeff, and we see him use them right here when he rolls with Shauna's name. He kind of yes-ands it. This whole thing is, in my opinion, an improv exercise to him. He is moving these characters around a figurative dollhouse this whole episode. This is all Walter orchestration. It's beautiful. Okay, so get ready for a rant, because Walter says to Kevin Tan about in regards to Shauna, she's not the only one. There's practically a coven of them, all up to no good. Walter using the word coven, in my opinion, is very telling here. I believe that this points in the direction of Walter's bad intentions. I'm going to set aside the debate around whether you, dear listener, want to qualify what the adult women are doing is in any way related to witchcraft, because for this next part, it doesn't matter. So you keep on believing what you want to believe about what the women are actually doing. If you research witches, witchcraft, paganism, witch hunts, etc., and the vocabulary historically associated with those things, you will see that words associated with witchcraft are so often used to belittle, degrade, and discount women. Oftentimes women that have absolutely zero association with witchcraft or paganism in general. It's a really easy tactic that people still use today to make women seem evil and unpredictable. Walter describing the women as a coven tells us one of two things. Either Walter truly believes that these women are evil, and that's why he's actually there to take down the women in some way, shape, or form, or he's pretending that they're evil and just saying this to Kevin Tan to kind of appease him and disarm Kevin. I don't personally believe this second option because, well, Kevin Tan is about to drink the hot chocolate and then be in a trunk and then some other things. So what would be the point? It seems to me that Walter is being truthful in this moment because he doesn't really have any reason not to be. So yeah, I do believe that him using that word shows us his true intentions toward these women, unfortunately. Unfortunately to everyone who's hoping that Walter and Misty are soulmates. Sorry. Cut sideways a little bit. They're about to intersect. Jeff and Callie are walking up to the building with the kitchen. An important note here is that night has fallen, meaning the women are about to have their little rendezvous in the woods where everyone is supposed to stay away. But Jeff, Callie, Kevin Tan, and I'll include Creepy Cop don't have this information. I imagine Walter does from Misty. We get a funny little talk where Callie calls Jeff out on the blackmail and how this is really all his fault. But as they're walking up, they see Kevin Tan in the kitchen. They had no idea that Kevin and Creepy Cop followed them there, so they start freaking out. Jeff tells Callie to go find Shauna and that he has a plan. First of all, sending your teenage daughter out at night, wandering around a place she doesn't know with funny looking purple people around seems like a bad idea, Jeff. Second of all, Jeff, you don't know where Creepy Cop is and you know he's creepy. Can you just stay together? This is Scary Movie 101. Jeff, come on. You were being such a good dad last episode. Okay, as Jeff is walking into the kitchen, we can hear Kevin Tan say, "This Jessica Roberts person, she was involved in all of this how?" Showing us that Walter really is laying out all the information. We have never seen Misty tell Walter about Jessica Roberts. This is clear evidence to me that Walter knows everything that's going on. And I hate to say it, guys, I don't think it's for the love of Misty. Jeff approaches and confronts Kevin about following them there. Walter steps out, but is for sure still listening. And then Jeff gives Kevin a fake confession, which is really sweet. He is willing to take the fall for Shauna and says that he's the one that killed Adam Martin. The actor who plays Jeff is having this amazing moment. He is acting the crap out of this scene. He's crying, opening up about how he killed Adam to protect his family. And then right in the middle of it, Kevin passes out. The way that this show makes me laugh is messed up. I love it. I love it so much. Obviously, Jeff has no idea what's going on and he freaks out. Walter walks back in and says, phenobarbital. Like, that is going to make sense of the situation for poor, innocent little Jeff, who thinks that taking a trip to Colonial Williamsburg and churning butter is an exciting, spontaneous getaway. So, poor Jeff. Walter says, that was a beautiful false confession. I could see it came out of real love. And Jeff says, are you like one of the cult people? And Walter says, oh no, Do you want to help me move this body? Okay. So phenobarbital is a sedative. So Kevin is not currently deceased. However, Walter is already referring to him as a body, which I think says a lot about Walter. Next, Walter uses, beautifully, I want to add, really common panic strategies with Jeff for this next part to get Jeff into action and to help him. He gets down on Jeff's level. He calls him buddy, which may be condescending in a different context, but in a panic situation, it's a calming strategy. He acknowledges that this is a really stressful situation. He reassures Jeff that everything's going to be fine. And then he gives Jeff really clear instructions on what he should do next. These are really common strategies that most people who work with the public are trained in. Even I have been trained in this, and it works beautifully on Jeff, so that Jeff will help Walter. I feel like that clip should honestly be used in training videos for these strategies. Can you imagine? That would be crazy, but it's amazing how well it works. We jump back to 1996 with freaking Coach Ben in the cave. And this man has been trying to start a fire, struggling because he has had the teenagers taking care of him since the plane crash and hasn't learned how to do a freaking thing on his own. We do hear dripping, though, while he's in there, which is the most interesting thing to me, because a grown man not being able to take care of himself is uninteresting to me. Back to the cabin. Shauna comes in with some meat. I don't know what else to call it, guys, so, including Javi's heart. They look to Travis in a similar way that they kind of looked to Shauna in regards to Jackie. Shauna took the first bite. But first, there's multiple second shots on some of the girls, and you just see them breathing really hard. It shows how hungry they are, yes, but it also harkens back to making the girls look like a pack of wolves. Poor Travis. I'm going to try to get through this part as quickly as possible because it's honestly horrific. Travis is crying. He puts his wooden wolf figurine on the mantle. He takes Javi's heart from Shauna and bites. He looks sad and disgusted with himself. And then everyone puts the meat in the skillet. Misty brings Lottie some food upstairs, and she doesn't want to eat it. Misty basically has to force Lottie to eat, and Lottie says, I thought it wanted what was best for us. Now I'm not so sure. And Misty says, and your team needs you. Eat. So again, we see Misty being this kind of like ruthless caregiver, her own moral code. Very quickly jump back to 2021. Like I said, we stay in 2021 for most of the episode. And Lottie is standing with her eyes closed in her cabin. And this song titled God is Alive, Magic is Afoot is playing. And it is so creepy and so perfect. I'm obsessed. Lottie seems to be communing in some way. She notices that her wardrobe has been broken into, and it doesn't piss her off like you may expect. Like if someone broke into a locked wardrobe that I had, I'd be like, that was locked for a reason, but it doesn't piss her off at all. She seems like excited by it. We see Van watching Ty call Lottie's doctor and crisis team and telling them not to come get her. Ty says they're going to bring Lottie in themselves, which is very much a blatant lie. And then we see everyone start to meet in the woods. We see Natalie put an actually sharp knife up her sleeve, which just kind of confirms the idea that Natalie understands more than anyone how quickly this situation can get out of hand. Even if everyone were all just play acting until a crisis team came and got Lottie, Natalie is not trusting this situation to go well. The song God is Alive, Magic is Afoot has been playing this whole time. And then it cuts out on the verse, for magic loves the hungry. Guys, perfection. It was beautiful. Shauna asks Misty when the crisis team is coming. I imagine that Shauna probably thought that they were going to get there before they even needed to have this meeting in the woods. So her and Misty and Natalie are probably all panicking. Misty accidentally uses the pronoun we in her response as the watchers, the audience. We know that we refers to Misty and Walter, but Natalie, who is a little hypervigilant about how this whole thing is going to go, picks up immediately on that little slip. But before Misty can explain, Lottie gets there and they have to stop talking. This is important not necessarily because of Walter, but because Natalie can tell that this is already not going according to plan. Natalie knew from the start. It never does go according to plan, is my guess. We cut sideways to Callie walking through the freaking woods by herself. And she comes upon Creepy Cop. Not sure where he's been or what he's been doing, but here he is in the woods. Callie apparently went back to the car and got the gun out of the glove box, and she's hiding it behind her back because Creepy Cop can't be trusted. She takes the safety off the gun. It's getting really intense. We're like, oh my gosh, Callie's gonna kill Creepy Cop, and his phone rings. It's Kevin Tan's phone calling Creepy Cop's phone. And we see Walter holding up his own phone where he recorded Jeff's false confession to Kevin Tan without anyone knowing. So when Jeff politely said to a stranger, "Can you please leave so I can talk to this police officer?" Walter recorded it. Anyway, Walter is playing only Kevin's voice in the phone so that Creepy Cop can only hear Kevin's voice say a couple of words. But of course, it's not making a whole lot of sense. So Creepy Cop is super confused and leaves trying to find Kevin Tan. Walter and Jeff put Kevin's phone in the trunk of the unmarked police car with Kevin's body. I'm saying body because Walter said body, but Kevin Tan is merely sedated right now. He is still alive. But we can get back to how Walter literally now has in his possession a recording of Jeff's false confession. And I'm just supposed to feel okay about it? I want to remind everyone that Walter was drinking straight up milk from a wine glass last episode. I do not trust this man. I do not trust him with blackmail material. Okay, I'll try to get over it, guys. Cut sideways again. Still in 2021 to Lottie showing everyone the queen card. And she starts to shuffle. Shauna asks to shuffle the deck more, which seems fitting because of who eventually draws the queen. And Ty says, Lottie, can we talk about this some more? You can trust us, right, Van? And Van looks freaking entranced. It's at this point that it is obvious to me that Van wants this just as much as Lottie does. Van has no intention of getting Lottie help or listening to Thaisa, anything. Any notion that we had from season 1 or earlier in season 2 that Ty was the kind of default leader between the Ty Van situation is completely gone. From here on out, Ty seems to defer to Van. Van volunteers to choose a card first, which seemed to shock everybody. This implies to me that in season 3, we're going to see that there's a specific order that everyone is supposed to choose. And for whatever reason, Van has just broken that. Ty says to Van after Van has chosen, and now it's Ty's turn to choose a card. Is this what you wanted to happen? Yes, Ty. Obviously. What did you think the plan was? Aren't you glad you called off the crisis team now? Like, what did you think was going to happen, Ty? Sorry. I'm not sorry, honestly. Lottie says to Thaisa, Thaisa, are you refusing to draw? Because you know what happens if you do. Obvious implication is that person is inherently chosen. Another nod of things to come. Lottie very much seems in charge of this meeting, which is really interesting considering we know that at the end of the episode, Lottie chooses Natalie as the leader. So I don't know why she feels comfortable with this dynamic shift, but Lottie very much seems to be the leader right now. When Lottie holds up her card and it's not the queen, she honestly looks disappointed, in my opinion. This helps confirm my theory that Lottie wanted to be the sacrifice at the beginning of the episode when she tried to drink from what I believe was the poisoned glass. When no one draws the queen, Lottie says, again. And it honestly looks like we have other or bad Ty now because she looks like she's in agreement. Her face has changed. Natalie, Misty, and Shauna look horrified. Even Van hesitates. So I'm curious what that means about how that's going to play out in the teenage timeline in season 3 and beyond. If no one draws the queen, do they not have a hunt? That's what seems to be implied, but I don't know. We're having flashes now of the women in current day with their teenage selves drawing cards until the queen is chosen, and Shauna draws the queen. All of the other women immediately back away from her and go put on the masks. There's a shift that happens right here. And Shauna, does the bargaining thing. Hey, come on. And everybody turns around in their masks all at the same time. And Thaisa is brandishing a freaking knife. It is so creepy. The stuff of nightmares, honestly. Lottie says, Shauna, it's up to you. The way we used to, you can submit or you can run. And Shauna says, okay, time out. We're not really doing this, are we? Okay, so you've all actually lost your minds. There's no it, right? It was just us. And Lottie says, is there a difference? Guys, this is huge. There's not a ton to analyze about it. It's pretty simple. Perception is reality, right? That's what it boils down to. Shauna is technically running, but also seems like it's just like non-participation. She's not actively running. It's more of just like walking away. But we could call it a slow speed chase if you want. We cut sideways again to Creepy Cop, finding Kevin in the trunk of their car. As he opens up the trunk, Walter runs up behind him from out of nowhere, grabs Creepy Cop's gun, and shoots Kevin 3 times, presumably in the head. So I'm very glad that Kevin Tan was sedated for that, and I'm horrified. Walter looks amazed with himself, just exhilarated, similarly to how he looked when he hit Randy during the fake interrogation. And then Walter gives Creepy Cop a choice, blaming Adam and Jessica Roberts' deaths on Kevin. Presumably, Walter has altered phone and banking information to point in the direction of Kevin, making Creepy Cop a hero. Or Walter will change the records to point to Creepy Cop, which is my personal preference. He doesn't have much time to make his choice, though, because we hear sirens in the background, and Walter tells us that he has called the police. Now we cut back to Shauna running through the woods, and bam! Callie steps out from behind a tree and shoots Lottie in the arm. Callie very much looks like she will keep shooting if she needs to, and Shauna is trying to get her to stop. It very much does seem like Shauna is trying to protect Callie from the same type of trauma that she herself experienced. It's not that she doesn't want Lottie to stop or even be killed, but she doesn't want Callie to be the one responsible. Lottie pulls her mask off and says, "Is this your daughter?" And honestly, she looks completely enraptured with the idea of Shauna's daughter. This harkens back to teen Lottie's infatuation with Shauna's baby. I don't have a lot of theories about Lottie's infatuation with Shauna's children, but I bet the people who think Callie is Pit Girl are losing their freaking minds over this. The gunshot seems to have snapped the rest of the group of women, except Lottie, out of whatever trance they may have been in. And Lottie then says that it is with them right now. Shauna cannot stand this nonsense anymore and says, "Misty, where the F is the psych team?" And then Ty has to explain that they called them off because Van didn't want to do it. And it seems that regular Ty, normal Ty, whatever we're calling, is back with us, and we no longer have other Ty. Van's response is, "It's not right. She's like this because of us." And I gotta tell you guys, this is pretty frustrating. Because first of all, we know that Lottie has struggled with delusions and visions since she was a little kid. I have to assume that adult Van knows this, but I suppose it's possible she doesn't. Second of all, even if Lottie is experiencing delusions because of what the other girls did during their 19 months in the wilderness, that does not mean psychiatric intervention can't help. Yes, I'm sure psychiatry and therapy in general will be so much better in the future. But even still today, people work on past traumas and learn to cope within the confines of society. Van very much feels like an enabler in this moment, which is really sort of complex because at other times we see her basically being a follower of Lottie.